The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. That'll sound just about right. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great webinar with you for you today. My name's Don Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Seven Signal. With me today, we've got a special guest, Keith Parsons, CWNE number 3, Managing Director of Wireless LAN Pros. We've also got Jim Vada, our CWNE resident, number 183. He's our Director of Global Wi-Fi Solutions. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. We've got 11 o'clock local time here, and we've got a really great agenda for you today. Something a little bit out of the ordinary. You know, we try and do a lot of technical things with you guys each week on our best practices webinar series. And this one, we wanted to take a look at kind of career spotlight, the future of the wireless network engineer. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So before I hand the controls over and introduce Keith, I'm just going to go through just a few slides about Seven Signal. I know we've got a lot of new folks on the webinar today, so some folks might not have a good understanding of Seven Signal, who we are and what we do. So you'll just get a high level of that before we go ahead and get started. I wouldn't be a very good marketing guy if I didn't give you all an overview. So a little bit about Seven Signal. Started in 2007 by some founders from Nokia back in Finland, moved to the US shortly after that. We've hit some major milestones this year where we lead the industry in monitored Wi-Fi devices, over 4 million, and we crunch a lot of numbers over here, over 1 billion data points that we analyze daily for our customers. So some significant numbers, a lot of growth here over on the customer side at Seven Signal, over 200, over 30 partners around the world, 12 global patents right now. The product's certified in over 40 countries. And on the privacy side, we added GDPR compliance this year. Really cool. So in a nutshell, Seven Signal's here to enable the Wi-Fi or wireless world. And we do that by finding and fixing issues for our customers. And since 2007, we've developed an outside-in enterprise framework that's completely AP and device agnostic and completely modular. So depending on what your issues are internally or challenges are, we can fit the right product for your environment. Our products are, as you would expect, replete with reporting, learning, and analytics. And what we're doing is we're looking for the top 7 Wi-Fi problems. So every problem that has to do with the wireless LAN bubbles up into one of these 7 issues, or often more than one of these. So congestion, coverage, interference, network services, roaming, drivers and adapters, wireless LAN configuration, etc. And how we're finding those issues is we're running active and passive tests on your network with our software for packet loss, latency and jitter, throughput, etc., delivering a full spectrum analysis. So really powerful tools. And if you look at the converse of outside in, or what we call the legacy approach to doing the same thing, the access is limited, the visibility is limited. You're really relying on your current vendors to give you insight into either your device or your air, but you have got no visibility into that end user experience, which is where Seven Signal comes in. So we own that wireless ecosystem. So engineers are able to find and fix problems easily and get to those root problems quickly. And because we can go back in time and look at a period of time up to 90 days, you can find that issue at the exact time it happened on that device or in the air, because you're able to go back in time. So there's no more, sorry, I can't replicate that problem. You're not chasing ghosts, as our engineers call it. So we deliver actionable insight and results with our software in just a short matter of time. So really, really powerful stuff. And I talked about modules. We'll just give a high level of our products. We've got 2 products at Seven Signal. Our Mobileye, which is our 100% software as a service application that runs on the device. That's any Windows, Mac, or Android device. It's 100% software based. And you'll remember these problems from the previous slide. These are the problems that this product addresses. It's adapters and drivers. It's roaming, adjacent and co-channel interference, coverage, and congestion. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see Sapphire Eye. This is the product we came to market with early, and continues to evolve and get better here at the company. It's a hardware and software subscription. It's a perfect client or sensor that lives up in the rafters with the access points, has the full spectrum analysis, and it troubleshoots different problems as you would expect. So this is more network services, your wireless LAN configuration, radio frequency and co-channel interference, as well as adjacent channel interference, congestion, and coverage. So we're the only vendor that offers that complete suite. So with that said, I wanted to be brief. 4 minutes I think is pretty good. I think, Jim, that might be my fastest that I've ever done it in.
Yeah, impressive. You've had
Thank
your
you.
coffee this morning.
I have. I feel pretty good. So I'm going to hand the controls over to Jim and Keith, and we're going to get on with the show here. So, Jim, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and Keith, and we'll get going.
Yeah, happy to. Jim Vada here, Director of Global Wi-Fi Solutions at 7Signal, wireless network engineer by trade, and CWNE number 183. And we're really pleased to have Keith Parsons with us. I assume most of you know who he is, but if you don't, Keith is a really world-renowned wireless network engineer and trainer, and is a really pillar of the wireless networking community. He's very active on Twitter. You should follow him at Keith Parsons, and he has a website, WLANpros.com. He puts on the WLPC conference, which, in my opinion, it's the best Wi-Fi conference there is. And he's the host of the WLAN Pros podcast, which always is a good listen. So Keith, we're so happy to have you with us today.
Well, great. Thank you for the introduction. I'm humbled. I didn't know I did all those things. All I try to do is just kind of play with Wi-Fi. So today we're going to talk about the future of wireless network engineering, specifically about where now and where do I see us moving forward. So first up is, let's see if my little clicker works. This is me. My handle is Keith R. Parsons. There's an R in there. The other Keith Parsons is also me, but I never watch it. So it's Keith R. is there. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, and I just do Wi-Fi. And this is looking at my back garden. We have a nice mountain by there. It kind of got burned last year, but we're still happy. And this is the love of my life. I've got, actually, this is kind of an old picture. I now have 2 more grandkids, so I've got a total of 12. Now, onto the show. So a wireless engineer, it could be an internal guy that works for a company, and part of his job is to take care of wireless. It could be someone who does it full time, and maybe for a VAR or a systems integrator. It could be somebody like an SE, like Jim, that works, well, Jim is not just an SE, but SEs who work for vendors. In any one of those could be somebody who works and spends most of their time dealing with Wi-Fi. Well, we'd like to kind of get in and figure out what they are, and I've tried to work with the community, and so these engineers who do this kind of Wi-Fi work use a bunch of tools, because tools define what your job is. And tools could be, as simple as little hand devices or a protractor. I mean, we use all sorts of different things. And these are just the physical tools. We also have a whole suite of software tools, like 7Signal can help us do our jobs as well. What we do as wireless engineers is we design, troubleshoot, modify, and I had to stick in my little segue there so you can see, or just drive around and figure out where there is coverage, where there's not coverage. But what it all matters is it all is about the clients. Every single one of these clients that uses Wi-Fi at some level has to be connected to wireless. And right now, we've been thinking of these are either Wi-Fi or some of them are Bluetooth, both of which are wireless. My company, Wireless LAN Professionals, I think we might need to end up changing our name, because wireless LAN is only one version of how Wi-Fi is going to be wireless, as in RF, is going to be connected to the network. So to help in this, last month, I sent out a survey, and we surveyed nearly 1,000 people on what their compensation is. Now, I put up this little joke from, I can't even remember, XKCD, KXCD. Anyway, about correlation and causation. So I wanted to emphasize in the statistics I'm going to show you, one with 1,000 data points, they're fairly accurate. If you understand anything about statistics, the t-tails on these are very small. The last time we ran this, I haven't yet run it for the 2020 edition, but we ran some beta correlations on these and had our statistics were plus or minus 4%. So with this level of data, they're pretty trustworthy. We ran this across all geographies and got some pretty decent data. So anyway, just a warning, correlation is not causation. If I show something like, one of the things coming up is for every night you spend per month away from home, the average is 4% higher salary. That doesn't go and sleep in a hotel, you're getting paid 4% more. It means the people who are getting paid more seem to travel more. So let's jump into the actual data itself. So I put a whole bunch on the page. So let's just walk through them. I had assumed a couple of years ago, when the first time we ran this, that more people would either be freelancing or employed as contractors. But a full 90% of all the people taking this are full-time employees, not contractors at all. So actually less than 10% are all other type. Most of the people are between 30 and 50. We didn't have anyone sub 20. This is not an industry for super young people. And we'll have a 4-year degree. The crazy part is the more education you have, there's a negative correlation to income. So unlike some industries where the more education you get, there's a direct correlation to income. In ours, some of the people that have the levels of income already have a 2-year degree instead of a 3 or 4-year degree. A big chunk, 40%, work for systems integrators. That kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, most companies don't need or can justify having someone on site full-time just to babysit their Wi-Fi. Now, some could do. About a third of the customers that of the people in the wireless industry work for an end customer, but 40% work for someone who resells solutions, and that's because the companies are smaller and can't justify having people. It was kind of nice that about 13% are for people who do not have full time, not working for any resells anything, just the pro serve part, the professional services. So I'm kind of happy to see that piece go up. Yeah, it's my category, but I'd like to see that there's friends who are working here. Another good thing on the geography is the bottom left side. We've got over a third of our responses came from Europe. So we have some really good European data this time around. Oceania is actually just Australia and New Zealand. I don't even think we picked up any of the Tahitis or anything in there, but they had an 8%. And numerically, that was a pretty big chunk. The other, almost exclusively on this round, was Russia. We had a big chunk coming in from Russia, and this was my mistake. I didn't put a separate region for Russia, so they stuck it all under. But when the other matches, we did have a country question, and it matched the Russia question exactly. Now, most people, more than 50%, are doing Wi-Fi in offices. Only 20% are doing it someplace else. A whole lot of office environment. One that tells me, we need to be really good at office environments. But the other side is office environments are actually one of the easier pieces to deal with from an environmental standpoint. Now, we split it up between vendors, and Cisco, Aruba, Meraki, Ruckus, Ubiquiti, the top 5. Extreme is kind of close. This kind of changes every year slightly, but right now it's still predominant. And if you just take Cisco, Aruba, and Meraki together as a group, in fact, if you take all the way down to Ruckus, the top 4, we're above 90% in that category. And on certifications, we had a chunk with CWNAs, a whole bunch with Cisco CCNAs. I was kind of proud that ECSC had such a good showing. About a third of everyone who took the time to fill out the survey were ECHO. So this is kind of the background data, but let's get the part that you really care about. Let's talk about the money. So let me explain that it's like in your face, whole bunch of numbers. first. The little stars, 2 and 3, are Latin America, Asia, and Russia. And the reason I put a star next to them is they didn't have a statistically significant number. We need probably over 100 per region to feel really comfortable with the numbers. Just a couple of outliers could maybe skew those. So for Latin America, Asia, and Russia, don't, 3, that's pretty decent, but don't take those numbers. But for the overall average, the nice feature was, if you're involved in Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter what you have, what you're doing, the average income is about 105,000 US. Everything is in US dollars. And so whichever country is, we just transfer them all into US dollars. Another couple of issues, just go across the top and just stay on the global line for a minute. Those without certs, on average, got paid less than those with one level of cert. And then we looked at the CCIW, CWNE, CWNA, ECSE, and Aruba's ACMX. ACMX is substantially higher than just about everyone. In the global market, DCIEW from Cisco was under CWNE, but that's also because some of the other countries have extremely low salaries. What we found is, in fact, this is the third we've done this, and in the previous years as well, that the difference between North America and the rest of the world is fairly substantial. So looking at the global numbers, not probably where you should be looking. You should find your own region that you live in and kind of find where you go there. So for North America, CCIW, 191K, and that's on average, meaning there's obviously people higher and people lower. We will be published this later as the rest of the statistics, standard deviation, mean, median, mode, all those other pieces, so you can get a better idea of where these fall. So if there's an average of 191, that means some people are higher, some people are lower, and when we release the statistics on the standard deviation, you can kind of get an idea of the range. But as you go down, just having a CWNA and in the US is averaging 130K or so. Pretty nice numbers. And for those who are not in North America, I apologize. We're not trying to punish anyone. This is just the data that's self-reported. So Europe obviously a lot less, but the same trends hold true. CCIEWs, CWNEs, and ACMXs are the highest paid, but those are also the most difficult certs, and they take a while to get. And so you have some extra, oomph to put in where you're going. And amazingly, ANZ down in our friends down in Australia are quite well. Their economy is looking much closer to the US, North America than Europe. So where you live and what your certification is changes a lot about what your value is in the market. It's not your value as a person, it's just the value of what your economy and your local geography supports. And the next one we wanted to look at was like this. We use the same kind of categories, but instead of looking across just regions and certifications, we wanted to say, what's the, depending on which where you support, is there a change? And yes, there is. So same kind of area, global, North America, Europe, and then at the last one, I just put the rest of the world, all the other little ones kind of combined. But showing Cisco, Aruba, Meraki, Ruckus, Ubiquiti, and then I threw MikroTik, these are the top 6 that we got in our survey responses. You can see, depending on which region you're in, there's also a consistency between vendors. Now, it doesn't mean that if you sell Cisco or you support Cisco or you're a Cisco shop, you should get paid less or more than anyone else. Again, no causation. This is just correlation. People who work on certain sets of equipment get paid less. And a part of that, if you look over in the last 2 columns, Ubiquiti and MikroTik, the hardware itself is cheaper. And so if the hardware costs less, those who are getting paid services fees for working on it, it makes sense that they would also getting paid less as well. That doesn't mean if you're a currently Ubiquiti guy in Europe and you don't like 45K, you'd want to make 80, you should move over to Cisco. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but those who are working on Cisco consistently get paid more than those who are working on MikroTik or Ubiquiti. So that's the kind of thing there. I'll just take a break here and breathe and see if Jim has any questions about this data.
No, I think that's really interesting. I think, one of the things, going back to your correlation and causation point, is is, just because you have a certain cert doesn't mean you automatically command a certain salary. What it means is people with that cert who probably have a whole host of other characteristics in common, like probably more experience and working with, doing more advanced troubleshooting and so on and so forth, are able to command higher salaries. But I'm also really struck by the difference between North America and Europe. That's really huge.
Yeah, it is a huge difference. So both for in both versions with the certs and the vendor choices, it's kind of shocking. And I mean, in Europe, people are like, "Wow, you guys get paid a lot," and the data shows. Our previous ones, we were only pulling about 20% from Europe of our responses. This year, it was good. We got over a third came out of Europe. So this is some statistically significant data that came to put into these. We do have data on individual countries. I didn't detail out all the countries. UK has enough that we have enough. Some statistically valuable data on the UK alone, separate from Europe. But again, it's about numbers and whether or not you trust the numbers and the statistics. So that was just to kind of give us a where we are today. And depending on where you are in your career, if you want to get paid more, you might want to change the certifications you go after. We have the data on all those certifications I mentioned earlier, from the CCNA wireless, CDP, CWAP, CWSP, all of those, etc. Now, just because there's a line that we had, so many people, over 20% of people have CWAP, that doesn't mean that CWAP alone will change your income. Again, no causation, just a bunch of correlation. When you look at people with these, with the experience, with the education, they end up that way. So that's the past. Well, actually, it's the current. And just one side note, I gave this presentation a couple of years ago, and someone said, so if I move to America and I start supporting Aruba and I work 10 nights a week from home, I'm going to get paid this? And yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. But on balance, this is kind of where it shows up. Well, what's the future going to bring? Well, we currently live in the upper right corner. We, as in not collectively we, but the community that I just sent the numbers. We do wireless local area networks. We do WLANs. We use 802.11 as the protocol, but there is a wide range of other things that use wireless, use RF, use networking. If you look, all of these on the screen have the words wireless, area, network. They're all consistent. They have something to do with sending information over a network, over a specific size area, physical area, and using wireless. So the body area networks are things that we're seeing come now. A lot of people currently are using Bluetooth in this space, but there's some new technologies we'll talk about in a minute in this area. There's the stuff that's close to you, usually centered around a laptop or a phone or a tablet, and all the things that are associated with that. Our current Wi-Fi, there's an AP and a client connected, but then we also get little large areas, metropolitan area networks that are sized for city size, or wide area networks are even wider that connect wirelessly over even larger areas. And then we go to the super small and go to the Internet of Things. Internet of Things could also not just be fit in one of these geographical area categories, but all sorts of things from inside of a car, sensor network, all sorts of things. So as we're moving into the future, we need to be thinking there's more things we should be looking at than just Wi-Fi. And I know it's kind of hard. I'm kind of an old curmudgeon, and I've been doing Wi-Fi for nearly 20 years, and it's my thing. And yet I'm realizing I'm gonna have to break out and do some new stuff. I personally try to get anywhere from 4 weeks of training per year, and I feel like I'm falling behind. The amount of movement moving forward is kind of scary. The future is going to bring new things. They're coming along. Whether you're going to be part of the future, you may not want to. As we get more and more focused, it's harder to stay knowledgeable on everything. In my own career, I went from doing schools to universities to hospitals, then moved to the physical spaces out where industrial things go, trains, airports, those kind of things, to stadiums, and each one of those has some unique features. And but the core is all the same. Still, we have an access point, we have a client, and the environment was the thing that we're changing. What we're seeing now in the future is the environment is also changing, but so are the clients. The clients aren't the same thing we've had in the past when it was just a handheld scanner or a laptop and we used 802.11. We're going to be having to know new things. On the good side, the old things are still staying the same. You still, no matter what we're going to do with wireless, the RF part's still RF. RF modulations, you still know all the RF modulations. How RF propagates, maybe you need to know some new frequencies that we haven't been used to. We're used to 2.4 gig and 5. As we move forward, there's different frequencies to look at. But antennas, how antennas work in 2.4 or 5 gig or 900 megahertz, the antennas still do the same thing. Antennas have polarization, and we understand how that works, both cross polarization, circular polarization, those kind of things. Our cabling hasn't really changed in 20 plus years, and we need to understand that. The process of planning, the understanding of there's a requirement and how do we meet the requirement. Our PoE spec that we started decades ago has been upgrading, and we've been kind of going along with that because our APs needed more and more PoE. Our new devices will be using PoE as well. So the things we got good at in wireless, organizational structure, understanding how to interface into the network, those kind of features aren't really changing. A couple of things that are going to be added are like cellular networks. Maybe we haven't been playing in the cellular space very much as Wi-Fi engineers, but as wireless network engineers, that's just a network we're going to have to write on. So though we've spent years and years, some of us decades, old folks like me, learning how these things worked, feel comfortable that most of information and the technology and the understanding of how RF works is going to be and carry forward with you into the future. So don't feel totally stressed. But the next slide is the things we're going to have to learn. Yeah, we need to learn how TMA and CDMA and LTE work. There's new entire protocols, Zigbee, Z-Wave, languages like Python, XML, Java, PHP, entire protocols, LoRa, not just Bluetooth, but Bluetooth BLE. The big one here on the left side is CBRS. It's Citizens Band Radio Service. It's not like CB radios. It's LTE running in 3.5 gig, but it's private and it's an entirely different licensing system. We haven't had to deal with licensing for frequencies very much in Wi-Fi. It's all unlicensed spectrum. As we move forward, some of these new technologies that we're looking at have new semi-licensed, lightly licensed, kind of licensed, or unlicensed, and we have to understand how all those different kind of features work. So though the things we learned in the past are still valuable, we can still use them, there's a whole new set of things we're going to need to learn. And the one that's kind of sticking, that I'm keep looking at in the middle, is the one that's familiar to me, the 802.11 ABGNACAX-AD. There's a whole string of those, and those will continue on the future, as well as we'll be getting some 6 gigahertz that we can apply AX to as we move forward. So these last two slides were just like smattering of the things you need to learn. I don't think anyone can learn them all at an in-depth level, but we can learn them all at a level that we can at least communicate and know what they're talking about. And I'm going to lead to that in just a minute. So far, we've dealt in our Wi-Fi career with the FCC in the US, ETSI in Europe, A down in Australia. Depending on your country, you've had an FCC type legal group that was a regulatory domain. We dealt with IEEE. Perhaps we even got a little bit into the ETF. But we need to understand some of these other groups like the CBRS Alliance, the Wi-Fi Alliance, the Bluetooth Alliance, the Zigbee Alliance, LoRa Alliance. All of these have rules, and they're all trying to push their own technology, some of which are inside of a car, of which are sensor networks, some of which are things we haven't even touched. But they all use RF frequencies. They all use the skills that we've already learned. So as a Wi-Fi engineer, being cross-trained some of these other things makes things a little bit easier to deal with. you started on that journey. And this is just a start. I'm not suggesting you have to go this route, but there is a way you could get started going this way. The CWMP organization, those who we've learned to know and love over the last 20 years, the ones who brought us CWNA, CWSP, DP, AP, and the CWNE that I've been doing for a long time, they have come up with a new certification, and they're trying to branch out from being just wireless LAN, Wi-Fi, 802.11, and to look in these other things. Their first one in this area is called Certified Wireless Solutions Administrator, called CWSA. The exam is the 101 exam. It's I'm trying to like make this good, but I'm also going to tell you the truth about where it sits. This is fantastic to help you learn about the other things that exist out there. All those bullet points that I put up on the slide from all of those other organizations, all the other pieces, the CWSA is trying to help you learn, able to take skills you learned as a Wi-Fi engineer and broaden them out. Now, the problem with it is it's a mile wide and an inch deep. That's a problem, but it's also the solution. In the first round, as you first come and you're moving from your current comfortable position, understanding how 802.11 works, and you want to move and say, where else to go? This is a nice survey level subject of what's available. It talks about all of those other issues: LoRaN, CBRS, Bluetooth, Z, sensor networks, wide area networks, multiple area networks, body area networks. All of the things I just covered are covered lightly. We have time in this course to get really deep on all of the issues, but it's a good way to learn and see what's going on in this industry. It helps you move outside of your little comfortable world of wireless LANs only and move into a little wider. Another thing you could look at, and I'll just go back up a slide for a minute, is the CBRS Alliance. I've gone through something that they've pushed out via, there's 5 different vendors. I happen to use Google Coursera for mine, and there's a certification on how to do CBRS. CBRS is going to be a new, I have a blog that explains the whole process. If you want to check my blog out, www.com. CBRS explains the whole process of how anyone is going to be able to access and use the frequency 2.5 gig moving forward using LTE on 3.5. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be an LTE engineer. In fact, you don't have to know LTE at all. But what you do have to do is understand how licensing works, and this certification called CPI for CBRS is a certification that is for anyone to use those frequencies. A certified CPI individual must sign off on every single install of CBRS that happens in the United States. So there will be a market for people with the CPI certification to go on and validate that this is going to work. In Wi-Fi, anyone can throw up a Wi-Fi access point. In CBRS, their access points, they don't call them that, but that's how you see them, are little devices with a radio and an antenna connect up to your corporate backbone via Cat5 to a switch. So they act just like Wi-Fi, but in order to apply them, you have to have a CPI sign off a request for the use of that frequency. Depending on who you are, that frequency could be lightly licensed or actually free. But even in the unlicensed free version, a certified engineer has to check it off and submit that to an organization to make it happen. So CBRS has its own certifications. LoRa Alliance has certifications. Bluetooth, Zigbee, they all do. So as we move to this new world, as wireless engineers, we've been thinking about Wi-Fi. A good first step would be to look at the CWSA from UNP and get that mile-wide, deep understanding of all the places. And then depending on where you are in your career and what your company is willing to move forward, you can then choose which of those technologies you've just learned a little bit about you want to dive in and take on more. So that was a quick overview of where we were, kind of where the income is in this industry today. I don't have any information about what comes coming in the future as we move into this new world of other wireless, but these new other wireless things, they're coming whether or not you're ready. So think about getting a CWSA. There's a course, there's a book, there's online training, an exam to let you see if you understand that new vocabulary of what fits out there. And now I'll turn the time back over for a little Q&A.
All right, thanks, Keith. Yeah, we've got some good questions coming in. Everybody on the webinar, if you have questions, go ahead and use the questions pane to get those submitted. Now I'll read those off with Keith, and I'll restate a couple of these. So here's one. So it seems sometimes like there are more IoT wireless protocols than there are actually, IoT use cases. So are there going to be winners and losers where, there's certain protocols you should focus on and certain protocols maybe you can skip for the time being?
I think it's more use case based than protocol based. If you're you work for an oil refinery, that's where you work. Your solutions for fixing your sensors at the side of a tank that could explode at any time are different than people who are working in a warehouse environment. So I think it's more based on what is the business requirement, both the physical space as well as what kind of data and how fast the data has to go and whether or not you have backhaul or mesh. There's a whole bunch of requirement pieces that will then ask the question, the answer, oh, LoRa will fit, or Zigbee will fit, or Z-Wave will fit, or there's a whole, I didn't know all the ones that fit in all the different industries. So rather than learn one and then try to apply it to everything, I would say find the problem and then find the solution that fits. Z-Wave and Zigbee kind of compete in some of the same spaces as Bluetooth Low Energy, not all of them. So if you learn one, you might be able to apply it. That leads to the hammer problem. A lot of us have watched Mythbusters, and Adam Savage a book a little while ago called Every Tool is a Hammer. It's kind of a joke on the joke. The joke of if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. His joke is if you have any tool, you can turn it into a hammer and whack with it. Either way, if you only know Bluetooth, or you only know today, you only know 802.11, there's a lot of things you can solve with that, but it's not the most efficient way of solving certain scenarios. So you could go about this saying, what's the scenario I want to fix, and then research and find the best solution, or you could get really good at a technology and then you use it as your hammer.
Great. A quick question from Luke, were the compensation figures all in US dollars?
Yes, everything was put into US dollars.
And Abdul has a question that I also have. Can you tell us more about the CWSE, the Certified Wireless Solutions Expert certification?
It's not currently available. It's in process. Later this month, end of January, they'll be holding a job task analysis to start working on some of the components that sit on top of CW. The solutions administrator is the bottom piece of it, and then there's a part that's going to write on top of it that has more to do with integration. How do you access the database? How do you access APIs and more of the integration pieces, the software? What kind of metadata is being pushed back and forth? Another one that's focusing more on actual RF and the protocols that go along with it. So the expert's going to be writing on top of those. So I think I'm not speaking for CWNP. I just attended the first CWSA and kind of trying to remember what they'd said. This is the foundation, and then there'll be a couple more professional level courses and exams, and the CWSE understands not just the foundational, but the coding part, the database part, the protocol parts, and can tie it all together. I think that was the question.
Yeah. Another question here, is the CPI certification worth pursuing right now?
It's fairly expensive, and the reason I say fairly, an online class that costs $500, $600 to me seems fairly expensive. But the price of the class for the course itself, I was amazed. I didn't know when I first took it. The training was actually decent. It was only a couple hours long. In fact, it took nearly as long to set up for a remote test to take. It's that once you're a CPI, they send you a digital signature that you will use to then sign and submit any you end up doing in the future. So maintaining that database of all the CPIs in the world and tracking their digital signatures and interfacing with the Federal Communications Commission on all of this is really where a lot of that money is sitting. Because once you have a CPI, you have the CPI for life, and so they have to track you and know where you are and know your digital signature the entire time. So today, as you know, we're early, the 8th of January 2020. There's no CPI. I haven't had someone call me up and say, hey, you're a CPI, can you come and do this thing for me? So maybe not to, but as the frequency becomes, and we should be doing votes with FCC later this month or early next month, and they release this and it goes full time and anyone can access it, becoming more and more needs. By the time we get to this summer, July, August timeframe, when they start the auctioning of the frequencies, there's 3 chunks of ways you can look at the licensing of the CBRS frequency. There's incumbents that are not going to lose any of their current rights, mostly like craft carriers and some people have already been using the frequency. So incumbents don't have to change anything. There's a group that's going to be licensed, and those people in that license are going to go to auction and buy it, but buy little teeny chunks of it, and the chunks are defined regionally. And then there's a chunk of the frequency that they're leaving open for anyone to use. So we are waiting until summer sometime when the auction happens. Post auction, we'll have a lot of companies at that point will have bought frequency in CBRS, and they will need to have CPIs to go in and do all of their design and installs. So maybe not this month, but within this year, I can see a big need for CPIs. So you might want to get early in on it or wait until after you can see it in advance. It's only a couple hours, it take you half a day plus $500 and get another cert. Then again, don't look at me. I collect certs, so
Yeah.
it's my hobby.
Yeah. Do you get a CPI number? That might be an incentive.
Not like your number 2. You're like number 1,627.3. I mean, it's tied to your digital certificate.
Understood. Cool. And
so you couldn't look at my number and your number and tell who got it first.
Right. Okay. Just one more question again on CBRS. So, a lot of marketing and noise out there about CBRS. But what are some, in your view, what are some of the real enterprise use cases for it?
Well, it's controlled, unlicensed. I'll call it unlicensed because if you're in the GA section and you're the people who have it in an area, you just have to ask, you'll get it given. So it's a controlled frequency that no one else can use at your physical location. And it's using LTE, which is way, way more efficient user of spectrum than Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, only one device can talk per time on that frequency for as far as it goes. I mean, we understand how Wi-Fi works, and PCI and ACI and all those issues in Wi-Fi did. With CBRS, if you're assigned a little chunk of frequency, and it's using LTE to do it very efficiently, multiple devices can talk at the same time. You could have, say in a hotel, a CBRS license, CBRS handled devices, handheld that you give to all the maids or the workers in your building, and you set up an AP-like infrastructure, very much like Wi-Fi. It's 3.5 gig, so it's kind of halfway between 2.4 and 5 gig. We already understand the propagation characteristics. We understand how to pull cables to locations and bring them back. And you could have your own internal network that has no interference. That's fantastic. We've been dreaming of it for a long time. But you have to have uses. And depending on what the devices are, if they talk this language, this frequency and LTE, they'll be able to use this and have no interference whatsoever. So I see, and right now we don't have a lot of handheld devices. S10s, Apple iPhone 11s have it, and moving forward, a lot of companies are gonna have it because the CBRS is a frequency, has been in Japan as a cell frequency for 4 or 5 years now. So a lot of vendors have already built it right into their devices. So that's one type where you have no cellular backhaul, nothing, it's just all internal. Could be in a warehouse with barcode scanners that use CBRS. where it has the characteristics of LTE, but the install ease of Wi-Fi. It's just an AE hanging off of a Cat5 cable connected to a PoE switch. And now we have our own network infrastructure. So there's that whole chunk of it. The other chunk of it is more aligned with cellular. It's a solution like for a hospital that wanted to offer internal cellular. And today they would have to put in a DAS system, a distributed antenna system, and pull some leaky coax through the whole building at $1 million in order to pull that off. You could get that feature much, much cheaper by putting in neutral host CBRS and then offer the ability for the clients to backhaul off. The problem with that today is you need that the function of a cell tower. And most of the CBRS vendors are building that in either locally on a local appliance you'd put in your stack on your rack, or some are heading towards a more of a cloud-based version where they could provide all of those cell services, could do some handoff back to the cell tower. So either a network that doesn't need cellular and it's private and you can carry your own information, like in a mine or in a building where you were like that, or link to cellular. Either way, they're both options for CBRS.
Awesome, great. All right, Keith, I think that about wraps up the questions.
All right. Well done, you guys.
I'll just say later.
Go ahead.
Later this month, not this month, next in February, we'll be releasing all of the data that supports that compensation survey. So if you're interested in more of the statistics, the things that intrigue me are it's not what's the average, it's what's the standard deviation, because there's a huge difference between an average of 105 and a standard deviation of 2, and the average of 105 and a standard deviation of 100.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. That was a very informative session. There were a couple housekeeping questions in there around could we get a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording? The answer to yes is both. I'd be happy to send you those. All you need to do is shoot me an email and let me know if you'd like a copy of the slides. I'd be, again, happy to share those. I imagine there was a lot of screenshotting going on, especially during the salary slides. But for those of you who do want the full presentation, I'd be happy to share it. And then lastly here, this screen that you're seeing now, if those of you are interested in a product tour of 7Signal, we have one every week. No sales reps involved, just a complete overview of all our products and services here at 7Signal. Just go to go.7signal.com/tour. And we'd be happy to sign you up for one of those. So thank you very much, gentlemen, again, for presenting today. And to everyone else, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the week.